Now, I want to move on to just some things I've been thinking about this week. So I watched or listened to two pretty interesting interviews that kind of dealt with the same thing this week. The first was Louise Perry's interview with Catherine Pokaluk, is maybe how you say her name. Louise Perry is someone who I've kind of recently, learned more about, and she wrote a book and has been doing interviews for a long time about kind of the sexual revolution and the damage it's caused for women and young girls, and it's been really interesting. I think she's really smart, really intelligent, really thoughtful, asked the right questions, and so her interview was all about was with Catherine Pakaluk, like I said, who just recently wrote a book and did a study of 55 families, I think it was, who have 5 children or more and are college educated. The reason why both of those qualifications matter is because basically all data shows that the more educated women in particular, more educated women are, the fewer kids they have. Okay, and so these women are the exception here. They are college educated and they have 5 children or more. Okay, so they have the highest, in a sense, some of the best education, highest degrees that you can attain, and yet have kind of gone against that the trend of having fewer children. And so she's kind of asked them why. She's trying to figure out why that is the case, that they did that. And she gives a really interesting answer. Basically, what she kind of, as she talked with these women, again, this isn't this is 55 women. It's in a sense kind of anecdotal, and she's not claiming it to be anything more than that. But I think it provides a lot of insight. And one of the things she said that she noticed almost in all the women is that there was a sense in which the children and having children were kind of a good in and of themselves, right? They didn't necessarily talk about what the children did for them, but rather that having children is a good. It's a not even necessarily a duty, but it simply is a good thing, that is a good thing to have children in and of themselves. And the reason why I point that out is because it's so, in a lot of ways, counterintuitive to what our culture says today about children. The children, you should have them. They're kind of treated like accessories now. You should have them if you want them. They make you happy. If they don't, then don't. We don't necessarily view children as a good in and of themselves, right? And it's an interesting idea that children are goods in and of themselves. I mean, this was true of societies long before our own. I mean, this is true of most societies across the board, that children, there's a reason that they, in the Bible, are viewed as blessings, okay? Goods in and of themselves. That someone was blessed if they had a lot of children. And the other interview that I watched, I think, kind of talked about maybe why that is. That was an interview with Jonah Goldberg was interviewing Tim Carney on his new book, and they're talking about something very similar here. That and here, what was interesting is Carney actually kind of goes beyond simply saying they're good in of themselves and kind of starts to explain why they are. And one of the reasons that he kind of says why they're good and why people should have more children is because they are good for you, okay? So they're good in and of themselves because they are good for you in the sense that, not that they make you happy or not that, and they certainly do that, but they're good for you in the sense that they force you to take care of someone else. They force you to think less of yourself. They force you to be selfless. They force you, in a lot of ways, to sacrifice, okay? And that by forcing you to do that, it actually provides you purpose. It provides you meaning. It provides you a sense of life is worth living, okay? And gosh, that is so important, okay? I think that is the biblical view of children, that they aren't these things that are burdens, that they aren't these things that have them if you want, but if you don't, that's okay. But rather, they are these people that God gives us and uses to shape and mold us into people who look more and more like Him, and therefore more and more like who we ought to be, the kind of creatures we were created to be. That when we are fruitful, when we do multiply, that we are fulfilling one of the central tenets that God put us on earth to do. And when we do that, we are happier. We are more fulfilled. Okay, that is huge. Okay, and so, yes, there's a ton of economic sacrifices. Yes, Does having children make any economic sense whatsoever? No. They consume and consume and consume, and they don't pay back. Okay? Do you have to sacrifice your social life? You can't go out as much. Do you have to sacrifice your independence? Yes. Do you have to sacrifice your time? Yes. You have to sacrifice a whole lot. And no one's saying otherwise. But, and almost anyone who has had kids will tell you this, at the end of the day, it is worth it. At the end of the day, no one would take it back. They would all do it again. That, to me, matters a great deal. Okay? And if we think about what is wrong in our culture, I think so many problems in our society would be fixed if more people got married and had kids, preferably younger than they do. I think that would solve a lot of problems. Okay? Because it would create a people who are selfless, who are more giving, more loving, more caring, more selfless. They are those things because they have to be, because children make you that way, because they require that of you. And as a result, we'd be a society that isn't full of anger, that isn't full of division. We'd be a society that is full of a bunch of people who are more selfless, more caring, more loving than they would have been otherwise, and aren't kind of left with this feeling of despair and hopelessness, but rather one of meaning, because they've taken on this responsibility of children, this joy and this responsibility. And so I do think that we're starting to see some cultural conversations about the value of children, the value of family, and how not only are they like, if you want it, you should have it, but rather that they are part of what makes life worth living. So I hope this conversation continues, because again, I think so many problems would be solved if we kind of took some of this to heart.